Cool. Well, I think we're good to get going here. The room's filled up nicely. So again, for those kind of, who've been on for a couple of minutes, thanks for bearing with us. But yeah, big welcome to everybody for today's session, which is another step on our self-service, guide here. And today's session is going to be focused around optimizing your help center and planning for that kind of ongoing maintenance. We have got the full hour here, as I mentioned before. The first kind of 45 minutes around there will be the content delivered by David and I, and then we'll jump into some, Q&A as well. So if you feel comfortable, you can come off chat and ask your question. If you don't feel comfortable as we move through, feel free to, post into the chat there, and Ali, in the background here, will kind of take your questions. But today's agenda, we'll kick over to some intros in a minute. We'll look at what you'll learn from today's session, some discussions and demos, as we mentioned, and then finally finishing it off with some Q&A. So, a bit of a background to myself, Paddy Milady, originally from the UK, reside here in Austin, Texas, for 2 more days before I head back, to Maryland. But yeah, been with Zendesk for a little over kind of 3 years. The 2 key areas that I help most with are strategy and best practice. Work with a range of different clients, all the way from SMB through enterprise. A lot of different shapes and sizes, customers, all different use cases. So I'm excited to kind of be here today. I'll kick it over to my wonderful co-host, Dave, for a quick introduction.
Yep. Great to see everybody. David Cernowski. I have been with Zendesk coming up on 6 years. The bulk of that time I spent in the success organization, similar to Patty, doing strategic engagement with customers all the way, again, similar through our commercial and enterprise spaces. But most recently, I moved into our managed services team, where I'm doing hands-on configuration for customers. So a bit of strategy and a bit of the technical and tactical, both in hand. So great to see you all.
So what will you learn from today's session? In this session, we will cover the steps and best practices around how to create knowledge-based articles whilst learning the fundamentals of self-service and how we think about it here at Zendesk. After this, we'll then focus on how to, test and set up and monitor its overall performance. This is critically important to maintaining a healthy knowledge base moving forward. And then finally, we will learn how to optimize your help center and plan for ongoing performance through content management. So looking at optimizing and maintaining your help center. Again, in this session, you'll discover how to optimize your overall knowledge base, keep them up to date by focusing on these key areas, such as enhancing content clarity, using multimedia, organizing and tracking those articles efficiently with article lists, supporting your agents using the knowledge panel that we have in the admin center, gather user feedback through article comments, and then finally, streamlining that content management through using our enterprise knowledge management features. Overall, these strategies will help you improve user experience and ensure your help center stays reliable over time. So during our demos today, we'll be using a mock company called Coffee & Co. Coffee & Co. is a leader supplier of premium coffee beans, and it's committed to delivering exceptional coffee experiences to its clients. As the company expands, it seeks to streamline customer support by implementing Zendesk workflows. This initiative to enhance communication, accelerate response times, and manage inquiries more efficiently. The ultimate goal is to provide outstanding support that reflects the quality of their products.
Great. Say real quick in the chat, everybody, obviously we're using a demonstration of a B2C company here, but would love to know your use cases. So in the chat, go ahead and drop if you are working in a B2C, a BDE, or a B2B scenario, and just give us a little bit of perspective that you're coming to the conversation with.
Cool. So let's dive into our first topic, which is multimedia for self-service. So using multimedia in your help center can greatly improve how users understand information by providing clear visual explanations alongside text. Adding images, videos, and other attachments really helps optimize your content and simplify, complex topics. This not only makes your content, more engaging, but also increases user satisfaction by offering diverse ways to access the information that they need. So when adding images, you can upload common files, such as PNG, JPEG, etc. animated PSG. These formats work well to illustrate, concepts clearly and keep your articles, visually appealing. For videos, you can actually embed content hosted on popular third-party platforms directly within articles. Supported services include, YouTube, Vimeo, Loom, for example. This integration allows you to offer, step-by-step demonstrations or product walkthroughs that users can watch without leaving the actual help center. So actually in step 3 of this series, we covered more articles and features. This session will focus on kind of multimedia to optimize your help center articles. And if you miss this, we'll post the, previous links to those sessions just in the chat here. Just to cover some kind of best practices on, using multimedia, you really want to use media that adds value to your article and helps, the users find answers faster. Number 2, you want to organize and name your images and files clearly in the media library to find and reuse them quickly when uploading content. And then finally, you want to use videos to demonstrate tasks or product features. Videos make instructions clearer and reduces those repeated or repetitive questions that we get all the time. And you want to embed those videos directly, in the articles for a smooth user experience. So why is multimedia helpful in self-service? Again, number 1, it makes information clearer. Users understand solutions faster when you include images, videos, or files that add value to those articles that you already have. Multimedia helps explain complex steps better than text alone. Keeping users engaged throughout. Everyone learns differently, as we know. Some prefer watching videos, others like reading or, downloading files. And really, multimedia gives users the options to choose what works best for them. And then we just touched on it just before in the previous slide, reducing those support requests, right? Clear instructions with video or images really help cut down the number of questions sent to your support team. And really, that is kind of one of the key goals of self-service. So without further ado, let's have a look at how we actually do this in Zendesk, and I'm going to flip over to David for a quick demo.
Great. So in just a minute here, I'm going to walk you through adding an image to an article as well as embedding a video. I do want to call out for you, though, that even though images are really important, even though videos are really important, make sure that you don't just use just a video or just an image as part of an article, because the more we get into AI, the more we get into search tools. Search is still a really powerful tool, and the text that you include as part of your articles will be really valuable. So don't think that a best practice would be to completely remove an article and just replace it just with a video. We recommend using both to, again, accommodate for both those learning styles, but to support searching as well. So here I am in our Coffee & Co. Zendesk instance, and I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my knowledge section. And in my knowledge section here, I'll come into the knowledge admin area. And in particular here, we're going to go ahead and jump right into looking at our coffee grinding tips article. So we've got an article that we've written for our end users on some tips on how to best grind coffee, but we want to add some additional components for them. We want to give them some additional information that we think will be useful. So in this case, I'm going to add an attachment to this particular article, something that they can download and use for themselves. And I'm going to embed a video. So we're going to do both. So in terms of attaching the file, I'm going to navigate to our placement area here on the right-hand side, and I'm going to click edit. So I'm editing the placement for this particular article. And if I scroll down towards the bottom on the placement side, one of the options is attachments. And I'm going to manage attached media. When I click that, that's going to open up the media gallery that can be used to obviously attach items to this particular article, but can be used to manage all of the resources that are available to other users in our help center as we're managing this. So right now, when I open it, by default, the media library will show what is currently available on this article. And as we haven't uploaded anything to this point yet on this article, there's nothing here. I can further go and filter to my media or your media. So this would be any media that you as the user have uploaded anywhere else in the Help Center so that you can quickly find the items that you have used previously. If you're not an administrator and you go to the shared with all, this is an area where you would see any resources that a guide administrator has made available to everybody in your instance in Zendesk. And if you are a guide admin, going to all media will allow you to see any media anywhere uploaded by anyone. So we can see the whole gamut of what's available. And you'll see here, one of the options is the coffee grind size chart. So this is a PDF file that we're going to attach and again, make it easy for our end users to be able to see that. Now, before I attach it, actually, one of the things I'm going to do, I want to make sure that not only do I want to attach this so that this is referenceable and usable by the end users, I also want to make sure that this is easily accessible to anybody else who might be working with content in our Help Center. So before I go ahead and attach this, I'm going to share this to everybody. So I have now shared this to everybody. This is now in the shared to all. So for example, if we go to the shared with all area, you'll see now that this is available. So other people working in the Help Center could access this too. So now that I've made this visible to everybody on the back end in Zendesk, I'm also going to just select this one and I'm going to choose to attach this media. So this has now been attached to this particular article so that when somebody navigates to this article, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment, they'll be able to see that size chart. Now, we want to take one step further, though, and we want to go ahead and add a video here to make this even more beneficial for the end users so that they can really get a full handle of how to grind and get the most out of their coffee experience. So I'm going to pop into my article here, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the embed option here, insert into article, and I'll choose embed. And I'm simply going to provide the URL for our video. This is hosted on YouTube, so I'll go ahead and insert that. Just a reminder that you can insert out of the box from a number of other video sharing services. And we've now embedded that as part of our article. I'm going to update the settings on this article here. I'm going to go ahead and publish those changes. So those are published. And I'll go ahead and I'll preview this article so you can see what that looks like now. So now here is our coffee grinding tips article. We've got the answer that we've put together as well as the video, and down towards the bottom, you can see that we've attached that file as well that users can access. Just a quick note that there are some size limitations to files in Guide. I believe it's 20 megabytes per file is a maximum file size. If you need to attach files that are of a much larger size, you could look at embedding links to other services where you might store that media. But so this is the approach where we can take to add and optimize that content. So if you got started by producing text-only articles, keep that fresh by adding images, adding videos, adding attachments that are going to provide additional value as your customers engage with that content more and more. So I just want a real quick pause here. If you have any questions as we're moving through the session, either about what I'm demonstrating, then we can go ahead and we'll check that for you. Oh, good question. I see your question there, Krista, on the question around access. Shared with all, I do believe that shared with all is focused predominantly on just back-end users who are working with that, but we'll make sure that we validate that as part of the follow-up and make sure that we get you those details to be certain as well. My understanding is that this would be about making it visible for those agents, those other agents who are working with articles, that they would be able to see that. But we'll go ahead and we'll validate that for you before we close for today. So great question. All right. Now, the next thing that I'm going to show in terms of optimizing your content, we're going to continue to enrich it by making it more interactive through media and those attachments. But we also want to make sure that it's easy for you to be able to keep track of everything that you're working in Zendesk. And one of the ways that we'll do that is by using article lists. So in Guide and in your Help Center, we already have a number of pre-made article lists for you. These include things like all of your articles, which is obviously all of your content. Or if you're working with various stages of publication, we can see articles that are in draft mode. We can see articles that you've archived and removed. That's one best practice that I really want to call out for you all, is that keep in mind that if articles are no longer relevant, if it doesn't apply anymore, please take it down. Your end users will continue to search, they'll Google, they'll find that outdated content, and outdated content can actually be something that drives an increase in ticket volume, because if they're finding content that is no longer relevant and no longer accurate, they may be trying to do things that don't work anymore, which causes them to introduce tickets. So definitely a great component. Obviously also your published articles as well. Now, a quick note here, you do need to be a guide admin, or you need to be an agent with edit permissions to be able to leverage these article lists, and we can take a look at that. Great question, Jose, around, I saw your note there around AI agents taking into account the information contained in a video. So right now, Zendesk AI agents are not analyzing the content of the downstream content within the video, i.e. the existing article transcript and those sorts of things. I do know that directionally, product-wise, that is an area where we are headed, but that's one thing to call out, that if you are wanting your end users to search the transcript or the language specifically in the video, that is not something that AI agents would do immediately out of the box as it stands right now. So a great question. And that's part of the reason, another reason why I also recommend don't sacrifice written text in your articles just for video content. Now, why would we want to use these article lists? Again, this can be really helpful. If you have really built out that help center pretty quickly, you can end up with a lot of content, and that can be challenging to stay on top of. So article lists can be really useful to scope down the content that you need to be paying attention to in a particular way. This can also be really useful to help you in terms of tracking your progress. So again, if you're starting to use things like your draft approach, working with articles in archive mode, or if you start getting into team publishing, which we'll talk about later in terms of enterprise features, these article lists can be really useful in that approach. The other is obviously if you are supporting your content across multiple languages or geographies, using article lists can be really useful to make sure that you keep those things in sync and useful. So let me go ahead and jump in and give you a demo of what working with some of those article lists can look like. So I'm going to come back to my articles here. And right now I'm seeing all articles. So this is one of my preset article lists. And you can see that I've got a couple other ones that I mentioned. So for example, if I wanted to see articles that are just in draft mode, we could see that. But coming back to all our articles, one of the things that I can do is I'm going to filter all of my articles, and I'm going to go into my article placement area. And let's say that I want to concentrate on just articles around brewing guide and tips. This is an area of concentration for the business. We're really focusing on this content right now, and we want to make sure that this is something that I'm paying attention to. So I've added a filter to scope to this particular section of my knowledge base. One of the things that I'm going to do while I'm here is I'm going to go ahead and change the columns that are visible as part of this list. So right now you'll see that I've got review status as one of these options. And let's say that right now that's not what's important to me. What's important to me here is I want to make sure I understand who the authors were and when this content was created. So I'm going to add those two columns, and I'm going to remove review status. So I've modified the columns that are visible as part of this article list view. And now that I've created it, I'm going to save this search list. And I'm just going to save this as our brew tips articles. I've now saved that as a list. And now you'll see down at the bottom here are all of our predefined article lists. I now have one called Brew Tips Articles. So this is an area that I was focusing on from a content management perspective. Rather than having to hunt and find those articles, I can just create a quick list, save it, and come into it. And the columns that I have for this particular list will persist. So when I jump back to this, you'll see that I've got author and created on. But if I go back to all articles, you'll see that I've got review status here. So you can show and hide columns and have those saved as part of your article lists. So this can be a really useful feature as you're dealing with more content and trying to stay on top of that and keep it in good shape.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. So let's look at knowledge in the context panel. First I'm going to explain kind of what this is and what it does, and then we'll look at in a later section about why it's important with the whole kind of self-service strategy. So the knowledge section in the context panel really lets agents access the knowledge base, community, and external content, and take actions related to content while working on tickets without actually leaving, the ticketing interface. When an agent opens the knowledge section, suggestions matching the topic of the ticket and last reply of the ticket requester appear, if there are any. When there is a new reply in the ticket conversation, the automatic suggestions are refreshed to include, that reply. An icon beside each item indicates whether it's an article, a post, or restricted internal content. Some best practices with, the knowledge section is to, really encourage agents to, preview articles within the context panel before linking them to tickets. This really ensures they provide, accurate and relevant information to customers. Always flagging those outdated and inaccurate information using the knowledge section. This therefore creates a ticket for your content team to really go in, help maintain, an accurate and, reliable knowledge base. Using the pin feature, which is really important to attach important content, to ongoing tickets. This keeps, key information accessible through the support process and improves communication throughout. And then finally, if there isn't sufficient information in the help center about a ticket, this, provides an opportunity to create an article directly from it to help, resolve more similar tickets in the future. So why is the knowledge feature, important in your knowledge base and overall in the kind of self-service strategy? Number one, it keeps content, accurate and relevant, as we mentioned. Your agents can really flag those articles with errors or outdated, as David just mentioned, into, directly, from the panel. Creating that feedback loops allows, prompt updates and helps you, really keep that content fresh. Spotting the knowledge gaps in real time as well. We understand that more are being asked from, the support team, right? And just having a process where agents can request, new tickets, new articles to be created, from that missing information really helps. And again, overall, this just helps, maintain, a healthy knowledge base. And then, finally, following knowledge-centered service, practices more seamlessly, you can use the knowledge section to align your work, with those principles. And this approach really helps, capture the information consistently while working, still in the ticket interface, so the agents can, work from one space and not having to go kind of elsewhere. And with that, David's going to show you how we use this in the agent workspace.
Great. All right. So as Patty mentioned, one of the things that we'll want to do with our agents is we want to make sure that they are, again, leveraging knowledge whenever and wherever possible to speed the resolution of the tickets that they're dealing with. And obviously for you to help build out and enhance that self-service muscle to make sure that you're providing that opportunity for immediate resolution for your end users. So I've got a ticket open here around gift card options. So the ticket has come in from the customer and they're asking, does your company sell gift cards? So this is a question that we've got. And I've got the knowledge panel open here. And as you can see right now, Zendesk has already tried to search for reference to gift cards in my knowledge base, and it hasn't found anything. So as an agent, I can see right now that we don't have any knowledge to immediately address this issue. But I know, following the knowledge-centered service approach, that number one, we're probably going to get this question in the future. So we should go ahead and we should create some content that I can share with this customer, but also then can help me address this issue if it comes in from any of their customers in the future. So you'll see one of the options in the knowledge context panel is to choose to either create an article or request an article in the upper right-hand corner. Now, if you are empowering your agents to create content, we can obviously create an article. A quick note that you can use team publishing workflows so that even if an agent is creating an article to jumpstart the self-service process, it doesn't mean that that article is immediately published and immediately visible to your end users. You can create a workflow where agents can create those articles and get the process running. And then you can have later knowledge managers who will further refine those articles, bring them into brand context or whatnot. Or if it's a situation where you don't want your agents creating those articles directly, they can just request one. And if they request one, it will generate a ticket in Zendesk that can be assigned and routed to your knowledge team with a link to the ticket, as well as details from the agent around the type of content that should be created. In the coffee and co space, we do want our agents to go ahead and start that process of creating a ticket. Or creating an article. So I'm going to click create article. In your knowledge center, you have the option to create article templates. And so I've got one here set for template for Q&A. So here's a question. Do you sell gift cards? We want to use our Q&A template. So if I click that, it will automatically open the template framework for me. So I'm going to come right here and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab some information. So I'm going to title this particular article. Let's go ahead. Let's change this one. We'll change the title and we'll add that here. And so we can grab a couple of pieces here from our article or from our ticket. So I've named it, and I'm going to go back to my ticket, and I'm going to grab some of what my agent already provided from the end user or to the end user in their response, and I'm going to pull that in and pop that in as part of the answer to my question. Now, a quick note here: if you do have Zendesk's AI agent copilot and AI tools, I could take the response from my agent and I could use additional writing tools to simplify it, make it more friendly, or just do some additional work to speed and enhance the building of this content. But I've gotten this put together. We're all set. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we'll go ahead and we will publish the article as well. And now we have an article associated with this content so that in the future, if we had any sort of gift card questions that came in the future, when that came in, we would have information about our article directly from the one that we created from this particular ticket. So a great and useful step. Now, one other thing I want to call out for you is Zendesk has an early access program for a tool called our Knowledge Builder. This is a resource that you can use Zendesk AI. You can point it at your help center. It will evaluate a certain set of your tickets. I think it's the most recent 90 days worth of ticket volume. And it will compare that against your help center and identify not only help center structure that it would recommend based on the content of your tickets, as well as articles themselves based on the issues that your agents have been resolving. So if you're in early stages of building out your help center, this can be a really powerful tool to be able to speed you along there. And this is an early access program that is available for you to try and check out. And we'll make sure that there's a link to the EAP as part of the resources shared after we're done with this session. I want to double check here and just see if we had any questions as it related to that. Oh, great question. So Adriana asking, if you have more than one knowledge base, is it possible to search all of them? So great question. Coming back real quickly to look at this article, in Zendesk, in the backend, you can configure by default when a ticket is created in Zendesk, Zendesk will look at the brand associated with that ticket, and it will by default scope to filtering the knowledge center for that particular brand. At any point in time, an agent could remove that filter. So you'll see right here, I've got a filter for brand. If I remove that, it's going to search every knowledge and help center that is in my Zendesk. If I wanted to, I could add additional filters where if I wanted to scope it to just additional brands, if let's say I had 2 or 3, I could scope to say just those 2 or whatever. But yes, you can search all of your help centers. You can also use things like federated search. So we can search a community if you're using it, or we can search other external properties if you're leveraging Zendesk federated search or web crawlers. So great question. Let me go ahead and jump into article comments, because this is another great way that you can be able to update your content. Now, article comments are enabled by default. You can deactivate them if you prefer to not have article or comments available on your articles for your end users, or you can toggle them on and off individually per article. So you might have some content that you don't want your end users commenting on and others that you do, and you have the freedom to do that. This can be really helpful for you because this allows an opportunity for your end users to give direct feedback on the quality of the content that you're creating directly in your knowledge base. So as you're collecting these the comments, you can use that feedback to immediately address your issues. Now, this can be really useful to obviously help you update out of date content. You might get comments like, hey, a video would be helpful here, or could you attach a file? And we saw how to do that earlier. So pretty quickly, we can take those comments, we can use it to update the content. You might also have situations where people are giving comments that are actually issues that need to be addressed as part of tickets. And we can quickly turn those comments into tickets to drive immediate actions for those end users. And I'll show you how to do that. Obviously, over time, as you see comments start to come in, you'll start to see those themes and things like that that might help you better understand how to modify and improve your content over time to do that. And then the other is obviously, the more you can engage your end users in that shared process of building out content, that creates an ownership stake for them and can really build out that community for you. So those of you operating in a B2C or a BDE environment, this can be really useful. Also useful in B2B as well, but might be a little bit more pronounced in those use cases. So let's take a look at a particular situation. So I've got an article here that says, what should I do if my order is delayed or damaged? So we've got some instructions on what you should do in that case. But I've got a particular person saying, hey, my order has not arrived yet. So this is somebody speaking to a specific issue just to them, not necessarily a feedback on the content overall. And I want to show you that pretty quickly, I can pop in here and using this gear icon, I can create a ticket from this comment. So immediately I can click that option. I'll be presented with the opportunity to update the subject of the ticket, the description of the ticket, which will include a link back to the article where it was posted and the comment, as well as the comment itself. And I can indicate who should be the requester of the ticket. So in this case, I can make it the end user who submitted the comment, or you might have some other processes where you'd say, we don't want to have the end user be the requester. We want to make the agent who's calling this out. And so in this case, I could choose myself. And if I do that, the end user is not going to be notified. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create that ticket. So I've created a ticket. You'll see that the comment is updated with a note that we did transfer this into a ticket, and we can make that change. And then Ricardo, the person who submitted this, is going to be notified that we've generated a ticket, and we're going to go ahead and address that. One quick note here as a standard best practice, I do also recommend that you can add a quick note here just to say something along the lines, Ricardo, thanks for the note. Our team will reach out immediately to address this. And so that they know, and that other users who might see this comment from Ricardo are aware of the fact that you're on it and you're getting it all taken care of. And if we come into our Zendesk, then we could find that ticket and we could see where that would go. So this can be another really useful mechanism for you to drive that content.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. We're just kind of approaching the last section here. So again, feel free. We've already had some great questions already. Feel free to keep on posting those in the chat. We should have around kind of 10 minutes if you do want to come on for kind of live Q&A. So just calling that out. But next up, we are going to look at some of the enterprise features that we have at Zendesk, in particular for knowledge management. We'll drop some of the links in the chat if you want to learn a little bit more about the functionality, but we'll definitely call out some of the key ones. And if you have kind of questions about, what's on your plan, do I have this involved? Obviously, reach out to your kind of account executive who can walk you through all of these. And Dave, as we can move through these, feel free to kind of add anything additional to kind of the, some of the features that we're going to move through.
Great.
So enterprise plans offer features designed to streamline your content development and enhance your knowledge base. We'll cover some of the key ones that we already have in play here. And the first one we're going to talk about is team publishing. Guide team publishing helps your team work together to manage content easily. You can review, approve, and publish articles using set workflows. You can also prepare updates for live articles without changing what users see. Articles move through different stages and can be assigned to, team members as and when it's needed. Like we discussed earlier, non-enterprise plans have a similar process where agents create drafts and publish directly, without the kind of formal review steps. And then on enterprise plans, however, you can add in that review status to your articles, such as, in progress, maybe awaiting a review or ready to publish before those actually articles go live. And again, this allows for, thorough collaboration and approval throughout each step of that process.
I'll also call out for you that in Zendesk's analytic platform, in our default dashboard for knowledge, there is a team publishing section if you are on an enterprise plan, so you can see all the different activity that's occurring and who's engaging in that process, and could be really useful for you in terms of managing that content.
So I've worked with a lot of kind of customers in our time, right, who have really big knowledge bases, right? Thousands of articles in there, a number of different people working in them, from a team perspective. And article scheduling, is a feature that really helps with this. Essentially, you can schedule articles to automatically publish or unpublish at a specific day or time, in your help center. An example of this is, if you're launching a new product, you can actually prepare and queue up all of the articles related to that launch and then schedule them to be published automatically on a certain date. You can also schedule these articles to be unpublished. This can actually help you automate the management of the articles for campaigns and announcements that last for a specific amount of time. And then anyone with publishing permissions can schedule an article for publishing or unpublishing.
Yeah. This can also be really useful, especially if you're using your knowledge for internal communication. So BDE scenarios where you want to make employees aware of changes or planned launches and things of that. So really useful in those cases as well.
And again, when we're touching on kind of those robust knowledge bases, article verification is very important. The verification is an article setting that lets you indicate whether an article is accurate or current, or whether it needs to be reviewed and, possible revision. Again, this really helps keep your content reliable and relevant, over time. You can use the article verification to do the following things. Number one, manually unverify articles, prompting an immediate review and verification by those article owners. Number two, automatically unverify articles by configuring article verification rules based upon, predefined filters.
Yep. And I will call out here. Oh, go ahead, Patty.
No, all good.
Yep. I will definitely call out here. One of the things that I recommend, if you're on one of those enterprise plans where you can leverage verification schedules, as Patty called out, you can create different filters so different content is verified more or less frequently than others. This is where you'll definitely want to get into the analytics side of things and look at which of your content is being utilized most, either by your agents or by your end users. That content that is being used most frequently, you should set on a more frequent verification schedule so that you ensure that, since that's what people are looking at most of the time, that is always accurate, always up to date. Now, obviously use common sense and set the frequency that makes the most sense for you. So if you've got content that is used all the time, but is part of a process that rarely ever changes, you don't need to have it verified every week or anything like that. But you can schedule these so that that content is most up to date and other content might be handled on a different pace. So big fan of verification schedules, and you can assign that verification to other people, to your SMEs in the company, so that the person who's verifying the content is the person who has the most knowledge about it. So you don't need to have that just fall into Just Guide admins. So this is an incredibly powerful tool to keep that up to date and accurate.
Absolutely. And just moving on to the final enterprise feature that we have for you here, and that is content blocks. Again, content blocks is used by a lot of our customers, right? Specifically in a lot of different situations. But, if you have a content, that you want to use in maybe more than one article, you can really select it and create a content block. An example of this, right, is maybe if you have an address or something like that lives in one space, you can create a content block so it can be used and addressed, in multiple articles. The content block will then appear in the content block list where you can see it, you can check where it's used, and then, edit or delete it, from your help center. Some key points to call out, when you create a content block, it can be inserted into other articles, and there's no need to manually copy the text from one article to another article. And then finally, if it needs to be updated, you can edit any of the articles that use it, and all of the articles that use it are automatically updated from there.
Okay. I'll also call out content blocks are great, but we also have added as general availability the ability for article multi-placement. So if you've got entire articles, let's say you've got multiple help centers and you've got an article that is relevant in each one of those help centers, rather than creating a separate copy, you can place an article in multiple help centers in one step, which means then that entire article will be maintained in sync across all those help centers simultaneously. So content blocks are great if you've got snippets of information within articles, and article multi-placement is great if the entire article itself needs to be replicated.
Sounds good. I've actually just posted that link to that article kind of in the chat there for reference if anybody wants to dive into it in a little bit more detail.
Great. Well, everybody, now you are going forward armed with knowledge. And as G.I. Joe told me, knowing is half the battle. And so big fan here, but obviously the takeaways are: make sure that as you think about your content, keep it refreshed with visual, interactive components, whether that's video, images, or attachments, to keep it fresh and relevant. Obviously, your team can leverage content directly in the support interface to make sure that they are using content that already exists, but continuing to refine that content, either through creating new articles, requesting new articles, or even requesting modifications to existing articles. You can use our article list to help you manage as you grow your content library, to really scope that down to what's most important for you to concentrate at any given point in time. And obviously, using and leveraging those things like team publishing and verification can be really useful to automate the process of keeping the most important content up to date in the most comfortable way. And these are the types of things that are going to make your self-service really robust, help reduce your ticket volume, and help increase that immediate resolution for your end users. So it was great to talk with you all about that today. Again, that is our final step in our 5-stage series. We have posted a link to that playlist where you can go back and you can revisit any of these previous sessions to help you continue to keep this robust. I did see that Allie did also post. Keep in mind that Zendesk offers our website, training.zendesk.com, where we provide free on-demand training for anybody in your company. They do not have to have a Zendesk license to have to access this. And one of the paths, for example, is our self-service learning path, which will walk you through some of the concepts that we talked about today on your own pace. So just to know that you can reference that and you can use that as well. And so with the remaining time that we have here, we'd like to go ahead and open the floor for any questions that you have. And before we jump into those additional questions, I do want to go back and close loop on one of the questions that was previously asked, which is, if you don't share an attachment or a media item to all agents, is it still visible to end users? So I want to close loop for you there and confirm that yes, the sharing of media doesn't reference its visibility to an end user. So I'm going to go ahead and let's pop and take a look at that coffee grinding tips, for example. If I have attached, and again, the attachment will be part of the article placement component here. I've attached this coffee grinding attachment. This attachment will be visible when viewing the article to whoever the visibility settings for that article are set. So if end users can see the article, they will be able to see the attachment regardless of whether or not it is visible or shared with all in the background. The share with all component refers to, is this visible to agents who work in knowledge but are not guide admins? So this is the mechanism by which you would make that visible to all of them if they needed to be able to attach this item to articles that they're working on. So I wanted to make sure that we closed loop on that question, which was a great one. And thanks for sticking with us while we answered that one for you in detail.
Awesome. Feel free to keep on sharing your questions in the chat if you have any more.
Okay. While we're waiting for another question, actually, I will jump in and I'll just show you real quickly within the knowledge base here, a couple of those quick items that Patty had called out. You'll see on the right-hand side here, I've clicked on the gear icon, or sorry, left-hand side, clicked on the gear icon, and here's where I can get to my article verification section. And here we can set the article verification schedules. You'll see in our Coffee & Co. setup, we are verifying all of our articles every 30 days. So we're asking somebody in the company to affirm that this is in fact accurate. They'll get an email notification that it's time for them to do that. And they can do that, but you could create a separate schedule here where we could say for a particular type of content, we might want to have it maybe reviewed just annually, or we need something to be done really frequently. But so these are the various intervals that we can select, and we can use various filters, whether it's who the author was, whether it's the help center that it lives in, or where it's positioned, whatever it happens to be, we can use these various filter features to determine which ones we'll use in this case. So just wanted to call out that I think that that's a particularly useful feature for you. And I'll also call out for you as part of that, if I go over to the left-hand side, one of the already predefined article lists is a list of all of the articles that are currently not verified and waiting for verification. So I can grab these, and if I know that they're all correct, I can verify them in bulk. I can assign them to other people, or I can do whatever needs to be done to make sure that that content is updated and is all set. Patty, curious if, have you seen kind of people's behavior or approach to content change as they have started to introduce AI more into their process than just working with just agents?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as we always talk about when we're talking about AI agents, right, they're only going to be as good as the knowledge base. I think traditionally over time, right, David, you've worked in kind of success before your role now. We've typically seen people leave the knowledge base. Sometimes it's whether it's, they don't have the resources or there's other projects and it gets to a place where it needs a full revamp. Hopefully some of the steps that we've shown you today show you kind of how to work through that, how to assign to, different members of staff. And I think taking that kind of like logical step of, dealing with it, as and when, it doesn't have to be a huge project all the time, right? You can just take certain steps to ensure that the knowledge base is, healthy, the information in there is relevant. And then ultimately all of that information will set you up for a better place of adding in AI. AI agents, as I mentioned, right, are only going to be as good as the knowledge that we have, in our center.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's, I think, something really important for you to think about, that when you write an article, you are not writing it just for an end user or just for an agent. You are writing it for your AI agent. I just posted a link to some best practices we have in terms of setting up your content for to be really useful for AI. I actually really recommend this as a best practice for writing good content for your end users anyway. So even if you're not using Zendesk's AI agents, I recommend check out this article, read through it, and the best practices it describes, I think, are applicable absolutely to your end users directly. So this can be really useful to check out. And then I also want to take one more second, which is to share with you one last quick note too on something that that we had called out here, which was that, you know, using things like your team publishing. If I go into my analytics platform for Coffee and Company, and we'll get into my my guide here, you can see that I've got a Zendesk knowledge dashboard that is just out of the box available to you. And one of those items is team publishing. So this is where you can see over a period of time who's been interacting and updating your content. I also want to call out the knowledge capture tab. This one will be particularly useful in understanding which of your agents are attaching content back to tickets, as well as who might be creating articles from tickets, which we saw that process today. So we can see who's doing that, how frequently are they doing that, which article is being utilized by your agents. So in addition to just looking at the analytics and utilization of your content generally, this can be a really useful set of resources as well for you to check out.
Awesome. I think there's not more questions, but it has been great. Thank you all for your attention so far. Thank you so much, David and Patty. This has been awesome and pretty insightful. So yeah, we're gonna send out a summary of the event along with the recording and deck and some more useful links for whatever you need. Thank you so much. It has been great. We're gonna give you back 5 minutes of your day. So have a nice day. Yeah.
Yeah. Win the day with those 5 minutes. Don't waste them. Don't waste them. Run out, buy a lottery ticket. Do something like that. Seize the day.
Thanks all.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.